The old alien sat hunched over glowing tablets in the deep archives of the Galactic Council. His name was Hyunwoo, and he spent his days studying the writings of dead civilizations. Most people thought his job was boring, but today he found something that made his hands shake. The tablets were covered in strange symbols that hurt to look at directly. They belonged to the Vorthak, a race that had vanished thousands of years ago. Everyone knew the Vorthak had been smart, but these tablets were different. They felt important in a way that made Hyunwoo's skin crawl. "What are you looking at?" asked Ji-hai, his young assistant. She walked over carrying 2 cups of hot tea, the steam rising in the cold archive air. "Prophecies," Hyunwoo said quietly, "but not the usual kind about gods and heroes. These are about a specific world." Ji-hai set down the tea and leaned closer. The symbols on the tablet seemed to move in the dim light. "What do they say?" Hyunwoo ran his finger along the ancient text. "They speak of a blue world covered in water. A young planet where the people are still learning to reach the stars. The Vorthak called them dangerous." "Dangerous how?" Ji-hai laughed. "Most young races can barely leave their home systems. What could be threatening about that?" But Hyunwoo was not laughing. He had found more tablets deeper in the archives, ones that made his blood run cold. "Listen to this," he said, reading slowly. "The children of the water world will spread like fire through the void. They will turn tools into weapons and weapons into salvation. When they take to the sky, all others will follow." Far across the galaxy, a human ship drifted through the darkness between stars. Captain Dong-hyun stood on the bridge, watching the strange new suns ahead. His ship, the New Soul, carried 3,000 sleeping colonists to a world they had never seen. It was humanity's first attempt to build a home among alien stars. Dong-hyun did not know that his ship's path had been predicted centuries before his species learned to make fire. He did not know that ancient aliens had written about this exact moment, or that somewhere in a dusty archive, 2 researchers were reading about his journey with growing fear. The human captain only knew that Earth was too small for his people's dreams. They needed room to grow, new worlds to explore, new challenges to overcome. The urge to spread and build and discover burned in every human heart like a flame that could never be put out. Back in the archives, Ji-hai was reading more translations on her screen. "This part talks about numbers," she said, pointing to a series of symbols. "Star positions and coordinates." Hyunwoo felt his chest tighten. "Show me." The coordinates were exact, more precise than anything the Vorthak had ever recorded. They pointed to a small yellow star in the outer rim of the galaxy, a system most civilizations ignored because it seemed so ordinary. "Sol system," Ji-hai read, from the database. "One inhabited world. The species calls themselves humans." "Humans?" Hyunwoo repeated the word like it tasted bad. "What do we know about them?" Ji-hai pulled up the basic survey data. They discovered fire about 1 million years ago. They learned to farm 10,000 years ago. They split the atom 100 years ago. They reached their moon 50 years ago. She paused. They launched their first interstellar colony ship last month. The timing made Hyunwoo's hands shake again. According to the tablets, this was exactly when the prophecies would begin to come true. The moment the humans left their home world was the moment the galaxy would start to change forever. "We have to tell the council," he said. Ji-hai looked worried. "Tell them what? That some old tablets predict the future? They will laugh at us." But Hyunwoo was already gathering the tablets, his movements quick and nervous. Deep in his heart, he knew the prophecies were not just stories. The Vorthak had been the smartest race in galactic history before they mysteriously disappeared. They would not have written warnings about humanity without good reason. At that same moment, in an office high above the archives, Council Archivist Vextai was reviewing Hyunwoo's research request. The old alien had asked for access to restricted Vorthak materials, claiming they contained important historical data. Vextai denied the request with barely a thought. Prophecies were superstition, not science. The idea that some primitive species from the outer rim could threaten the established order of the galaxy was absurd. Humans could barely build rockets that worked properly. How could they possibly fulfill ancient predictions about stellar conquest? But as Vextide deleted the request from his system, he did not notice the small notation in the corner of his screen. The human colony ship New Sol had just made contact with its first alien trading post. First contact protocols were being activated across 3 systems. The prophecies had begun to unfold, and no one was ready for what would come next. The trading station floated in space like a giant metal flower, its arms reaching out to welcome ships from across the galaxy. Captain So Young had never seen anything so beautiful or terrifying. Her small human cargo ship looked like a toy next to the massive alien vessels docked at the station's ports. First contact? She whispered to herself, checking her uniform. One more time. Do not mess this up. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and So Young stepped into a world she had only dreamed about. The station's main hall was enormous, filled with creatures that looked like they had stepped out of nightmares and fairy tales. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others had scales that changed color as they moved. A few looked almost human, but with too many eyes or fingers that bent the wrong way. "Welcome, little one," rumbled a voice like distant thunder. So Young looked up to see a creature the size of a small building. It had 4 arms covered in thick gray skin, and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. "I am Grokven. You seem lost." "Not lost," So Young replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I am Captain So Young from Earth. We are explorers seeking peaceful contact and trade." The giant alien's laugh shook the floor. Other creatures turned to look, their strange faces showing amusement. So Young felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment, but she kept her chin up. A graceful being with blue-green scales approached them. She moved like water, smooth and flowing. Her voice was musical when she spoke. "Earth? Oh yes, the water world from the old stories. How charming that you have come so far from home." "Old stories?" So Young asked. The scaled woman, who introduced herself as Kelthara, smiled with too many teeth. "Ancient prophecies, dear child. Legends about your kind written by a race that died before your species learned to use tools. They claimed humans would one day rule the stars." She laughed, a sound like silver bells. "Delightful mythology, really." More aliens gathered around, drawn by curiosity about the strange new species. They asked So Young questions about Earth, about human technology, about their reasons for leaving their home world. The questions were polite but condescending, like adults talking to a clever child who had just learned to read. "Your ship is very small," observed a thin alien with purple skin. "How many of your people can it carry?" 23 crew members, So Young answered, "plus cargo." 23? The purple alien seemed amazed. "Our smallest trading vessels carry over 1,000. How do you expect to build colonies with such tiny ships?" So Young started to explain about the colony ships following behind her, about humanity's plans to spread across the stars. But she could see the aliens were not taking her seriously. To them, humans were just another primitive species taking their first baby steps into the galaxy. What none of them noticed was the figure watching from the station's command center. Admiral Crixthaw had been studying the human ship since it arrived, and what he saw worried him. The vessel was crude by galactic standards, but its design showed creative thinking. The humans had solved engineering problems in ways that no other species had tried. More troubling were the questions the human captain asked. She wanted to know about star charts, about the locations of other inhabited systems, about the political relationships between different species. These were not the questions of a simple explorer. These were the questions of someone planning for the future. "Interesting," Crixthaw murmured to his aide, a young officer named Velkar. "Most new species ask about trade goods or entertainment. This human wants to know about our military capabilities and defensive strategies." "Should we be concerned, sir?" Velkar asked. Crixthaw was quiet for a long moment. "Pull up the Vorthak. Prophecies," he said finally, "the ones about the water world." While the Admiral researched ancient warnings, So Young completed her first trade deals with the aliens. She exchanged samples of Earth art and music for basic star charts and communication equipment. The aliens thought they were getting the better deal, trading advanced technology for primitive curiosities. But So Young was learning something much more valuable than technology. She was learning how the aliens thought, how they organized their societies, how they made decisions. Every conversation taught her something new about galactic civilization. When So Young returned to her ship hours later, she was not the same person who had nervously stepped onto the station. She had seen the galaxy's power structure, and she understood humanity's place in it. More importantly, she had seen the aliens' weaknesses. "They think we are harmless," she reported to her crew. "They see us as children playing with toys. They have no idea what we are capable of." Her communications officer, Min Ho, was already working on the alien technology they had acquired. What should have taken years to understand, he was figuring out in hours. His quick mind grasped concepts that had taken other species generations to master. "This is incredible," Min Ho said, his eyes bright with excitement. "Their computers are more advanced than ours, but they think in such rigid patterns. There are vulnerabilities everywhere." As So Young's ship prepared to leave the trading station, Admiral Crixthaw watched from his command center. He had spent the evening reading the Vorthak Prophecies, and the words echoed in his mind like a warning bell. "They shall learn in moments what others master in lifetimes," the ancient text said. "Their hunger for knowledge shall be matched only by their will to survive." The prophecies were starting to look less like stories and more like predictions of the future. The space around Centauri looked peaceful in the morning light of twin suns. Mining ships moved slowly between asteroids, their crews working to extract precious metals from the floating rocks. It should have been another quiet day in the outer rim, but Commander Tae-jin knew better. His warship, the Soul's Pride, hung in the shadow of a large asteroid. It was humanity's first real fighting ship, built from stolen alien designs and human creativity. The crew was young and scared, but they had trained for this moment for months. "Sir," called Lieutenant Yoon-soo from her position at the sensor station, 37 enemy ships coming in fast. They will be here in 20 minutes. Tae-jin nodded calmly. The Velkaran fleet was 3 times larger than his small human force. They had better weapons, stronger shields, and centuries of combat experience. By every rule of space warfare, this should be a massacre, but humans did not follow the rules. "Signal the mining ships," Tae-jin ordered. "Tell them to start Protocol 7. The mining vessels looked harmless as they continued their work among the asteroids. The Velkaran fleet commander probably laughed when he saw them. Civilian ships fleeing in panic was exactly what he expected from the primitive humans. What he did not expect was for the mining ships to start moving with military precision. Captain Yu-jin commanded one of the mining vessels, a big ugly ship, designed to crack open asteroids and suck out their valuable contents. Her crew had been miners just 6 months ago, but now they were something new. They were human warriors who made weapons from whatever they could find. "Target the big rock there," Yu-jin told her gunner, pointing to an asteroid the size of a city block. "Right at the stress fracture we marked yesterday." The mining laser, normally used to cut through solid rock, fired at full power. The asteroid cracked like an egg, sending millions of pieces of debris flying in all directions. But the debris was not flying randomly. Yu-jin's crew had calculated exactly where each piece would go. Admiral Crixthaw watched the battle from his command ship, staying far enough away to observe but not interfere. He had come to see how the humans would fight their first real space battle. He expected to watch them die bravely but hopelessly. Instead, he watched them do something impossible. The Velkaran fleet moved into standard attack formation, just like the textbooks said they should. They had used the same tactics for 1,000 years, and those tactics had never failed them. But the humans had read those same textbooks. The debris from the shattered asteroids forced the enemy ships into a narrow corridor between 2 large rocks. It was exactly where Tae-jin wanted them. Hidden missile batteries built into hollowed-out asteroids opened fire from all sides. "Impossible," whispered Crixthaw's aide. "They coordinated that attack across millions of kilometers of space. The timing had to be perfect to the second." But the humans were not done. As the Velkoran ships tried to escape the trap, Tae-jin's fleet appeared behind them. The human ships moved in patterns that no alien had ever seen before, using the gravity of the twin suns to boost their speed and change direction in ways that should not have been possible. "They are using stellar mechanics as weapons," Crixthaw said in amazement. They are turning the stars themselves into tools of war. The battle was over in 30 minutes. Half the Valkoran fleet was destroyed, and the rest fled in confusion. The humans had not lost a single ship. Commander Taijin stood on his bridge looking at the wreckage floating in space. He felt no joy in the victory. War was not something humans enjoyed, but it was something they were very good at. They had learned that lesson the hard way during their violent history on Earth. "Send a message to the survivors," he told his communications officer. "Tell them we want to talk about peace." Back on Earth, scientist Yu Jin was working on her latest project in a laboratory deep underground. She did not know about the battle at Centauri, but her work would soon change everything. She was learning to capture the energy of Earth's sun and store it in ways that could power ships across the galaxy. The aliens had never thought to use solar energy on such a massive scale. They relied on rare fuels and complex engines that took years to build. But humans had always been good at finding simple solutions to complex problems. "If we can build solar collectors in space," Yu Jin explained to her team, "we can power our entire fleet without depending on alien technology." Her breakthrough would give humanity something no other species had: unlimited energy from the stars themselves. News of the human victory at Centauri spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had ignored humanity suddenly paid attention. The Galactic Council called emergency meetings to discuss what they called the human problem. Admiral Krixtha filed his report with growing dread. He had watched the battle, and he understood what it meant. The humans had not won through superior technology or numbers. They had won through superior thinking. "They do not fight like other species," he wrote. "They adapt faster than should be possible. Every battle teaches them new ways to win the next one." The old prophecies spoke of warriors who would make tools of the stars themselves. Today I saw those prophecies come true. The galaxy was beginning to realize that humanity was not just another young species stumbling into space. They were something far more dangerous, a race that learned from every mistake, adapted to every challenge, and never, ever gave up. 32. Tide had turned, and no one was ready for what would come next. The great chamber of the Galactic Council had never been so loud. 200 different species argued in voices that ranged from whispers to roars, their words translated into a chaos of languages. Holographic displays showed star maps covered in red dots, each one marking a human settlement or outpost. 12 systems in 18 months, announced Council President Zixandra, her crystal voice cutting through the noise. "They build faster than we thought possible. They make friends with our enemies. They solve problems that have existed for centuries." Ambassador Hyun-sik stood in the center of the chamber, calm despite being surrounded by hundreds of angry aliens. He was the first human to address the full council, and he showed no fear. His dark suit looked simple compared to the elaborate robes and armor worn by the alien delegates. "We come in peace," Hyun-sik said, his voice steady. "We want to work together for the good of all species." "Peace?" The Drakmarian representative slammed his clawed fist on his speaking platform. "You call it peace when you steal our trade routes? When you turn pirates into police? When you make war obsolete?" Hyun-sik smiled slightly. "We prefer to call it progress." Far from the council chambers, on the frontier world of New Busan, Captain Min-soo was doing exactly what the Drakmarian complained about. He sat at a simple table between two alien leaders who had been trying to kill each other for 300 years. The sector representative was a large reptile with scarred green skin and eyes like burning coals. The Vorthani delegate looked like a giant insect, her multiple arms clicking nervously as she spoke. Both species had been fighting over mining rights in this system since before humans discovered fire. "Your people need rare earth metals," Min-soo said to the sector leader. "Your people need organic compounds," he said to the Vorthani. "The asteroid belt has both. Why not share?" "Because they are our enemies," hissed the sector. "We have always been enemies." "Why?" Min-soo asked simply. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Neither alien could give a good answer. They fought because their ancestors had fought. They hated because they had always hated. But when a human asked them to explain why, they realized how stupid it sounded. 3 hours later, Min-Su watched as the two species signed their first peace treaty in centuries. It was not perfect, but it was a start. And it was exactly what the ancient prophecies had predicted. Back in the council chamber, Admiral Krixtha stepped forward to address the assembly. His uniform was covered with medals from a dozen different wars, but his face looked older than his years. "I have studied the Vortec prophecies," he announced. "I have watched the humans fight and negotiate and build. The patterns are clear." He activated a holographic display showing ancient text alongside recent human activities. The prophecies said the children of the Blue World would unite fractured civilizations. Look at the Outer Rim Coalition. The display showed 5 species that had been enemies for generations, now working together under human guidance. They shared technology, resources, and even soldiers. What had once been a region of constant warfare was becoming a zone of prosperity. "Every time we fight them, they learn our tactics," Krixtha continued. "Every time we negotiate with them, they understand our motivations better. They do not conquer through force. They make themselves necessary." On the medical station orbiting Taurus Prime, Dr. Sun-Hee worked 18 hours a day to save lives that everyone else had given up for lost. The Thorian plague had killed millions across 12 worlds, but Sun-Hee had found a cure in the genetic code of Earth bacteria. "It is so simple," she explained to the alien medical team. "Your people focused on treating the symptoms. We looked at the cause. The plague cannot survive in an environment with these specific proteins. The cure spread across the galaxy in weeks. Entire populations that had been dying were suddenly healthy again. The Thorian government offered humanity 3 star systems in gratitude, but Sun-Hee refused payment. "Healing is not something you charge for," she said. "It is something you do because it is right." Meanwhile, Engineer Wanho was transforming dead worlds into gardens. His atmospheric processors could turn poisonous air into breathable atmosphere in just a few years. His terraforming techniques made barren planets bloom with life. The Council tried desperately to understand how humans accomplished so much so quickly. They sent spies to human colonies, but the spies found nothing secret. Humans simply worked harder, thought differently, and refused to accept that problems could not be solved. "We have to stop them," declared the hegemony representative. "Before, they make us all irrelevant." The Council voted to implement Containment Protocol 9, authorizing military action to halt human expansion. Fleets from 50 species gathered at the border systems, ready to push humanity back to their home world. But when the containment fleet arrived, they found something unexpected. The local aliens refused to fight. "The humans cured our children," said one station commander. "They brought prosperity to our world," said another. "They ended wars that had lasted for centuries," added a third. Every species the Council had recruited for the containment fleet had already been helped by humans. They would not attack the people who had saved their families, healed their sick, and brought peace to their worlds. The fleet turned around and went home without firing a shot. In his private chambers, Admiral Krixtha read the prophecies one more time. The ancient words were coming true exactly as written. Humanity was not conquering the galaxy through military might. They were winning it through compassion, innovation, and an absolute refusal to give up. The galaxy's greatest fear was becoming reality. They were falling in love with their supposed conquerors. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never seen a day like this. President Jae-sung stood before representatives from 200 worlds, his hand raised to take an oath that would have seemed impossible just 5 years ago. The human leader looked calm, but his heart was beating fast as he prepared to become the first of his species to lead the galaxy. "I promise to serve all peoples who call the stars their home," Jae-sung said, his words translated into hundreds of languages at once, not as humanity's voice but as a guardian of peace for everyone. In the audience, former Admiral Krixtha watched with wonder. The old warrior had spent decades fighting wars across the galaxy, but now he served as military advisor to a human president. His scaled face showed no emotion, but inside he marveled at how much had changed. The prophecies spoke of conquest, Krixtha had told Jae-sung before the ceremony. But they got it wrong. You did not conquer us. You saved us. The transformation had been slow but steady. Dr. Hai-jin's medical discoveries had wiped out diseases that had killed billions. Agricultural Minister Seok-jin's farming techniques had ended famines on dozens of worlds. Most importantly, Foreign Minister In-ah's diplomatic skills had stopped wars that the Council had thought would last forever. Above the ceremony, Admiral So-young stood on the bridge of the massive starship Unity. She had come a long way from the nervous captain who had made first contact at a small trading station. Now she commanded the Galactic Defense Force, protecting trade routes and keeping peace across 50 systems. Through the viewport, Earth hung like a blue jewel in the darkness. It was hard to believe that such a small world had given birth to the species that now united the stars. But the ancient prophecies had been right about one thing. Humanity had indeed taken command of the sky. The ceremony continued as delegates from across the galaxy pledged their support to the new government. The irony was not lost on the older representatives. They had once dismissed humans as primitive children. Now those same humans were the ones keeping their world safe and prosperous. Captain Min-soo, now promoted to Director of Colonial Affairs, worked from his office on New Seoul Station. His job was to help new human colonies integrate peacefully with existing alien populations. It was delicate work, but humans had proven they could adapt to any challenge. The Andromedan refugees need temporary housing, his assistant Young-ho reported. Their home world was destroyed by the stellar cascade. Put them on New Busan, Min-soo replied without hesitation. The Sektar and Vorthani councils have already agreed to help with construction. They have plenty of room now that they are not fighting each other. The old enemies had become close allies after their human-mediated peace treaty. They even intermarried now, something that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. Their combined technology had made New Busan one of the most advanced worlds in the galaxy. Dr. Sun-hee continued her medical research from her laboratory on Healing Station, humanity's first purpose-built hospital ship. She had cured 17 different plagues in the past 3 years, but her greatest achievement was training alien doctors to think like humans. Look beyond the obvious symptoms, she taught her students. Ask why the disease exists, not just how to treat it. Every problem has a solution if you are willing to think differently. Her methods had revolutionized galactic medicine. Death rates from disease had dropped by 70% across known space. Entire species that had been dying out were now thriving again. Engineer Won-ho supervised the construction of humanity's greatest project, the solar web. Massive collectors orbiting stars throughout the galaxy gathered energy and transmitted it to any world that needed power. It was the fulfillment of the ancient prophecy about humans who would make tools of stars themselves. Clean energy for everyone, Won-ho explained to visiting alien dignitaries. No more wars over fuel. No more planets dying because they cannot power their life support systems. The stars belong to all of us. The solar web had ended resource conflicts across the galaxy. Pirates became obsolete when every world had unlimited energy. Trade wars ended when everyone had enough power to build whatever they needed. Back in Laut, the council chamber, President Jae-sung finished his oath and looked out over the assembled delegates. Some were species that had been enemies for millennia. Others were refugees from destroyed worlds. A few were former pirates and warlords who had found better lives in the new galactic order. The prophecies have been fulfilled, announced the keeper of ancient texts, a being so old that his species had forgotten its own name. The children of the blue world have bound the stars to their will, but not through conquest, through compassion. As the ceremony ended and delegates began making plans for the future, the ancient Vorthak tablets in the deep archives finally stopped glowing. Their warnings had been heeded, their predictions fulfilled. The galaxy had found its guardians, and the sky belonged to humanity, not because they had taken it by force, but because everyone else had freely given it to them. Admiral So-young watched the celebration from her ship, thinking about how far they had all come. Humans had left Earth as explorers seeking new worlds. They had become the protectors of all worlds. the healers of ancient wounds, the builders of impossible dreams. The prophecies were complete. The dominion of the sky belonged to those who had earned it through service, sacrifice, and an endless willingness to help others reach for the stars. The galaxy was finally at peace, and humanity had found its true purpose among the infinite lights of space.